With Easter just around the corner, here's a little Easter basket project. You make 2 petal frames. They're like flower shapes. And I'm going to show you how. So go to the end. I'm actually using the 1.5 mil aluminium wire. So go to the end, make a little circle, then decide on the height of your first petal or first loop. That's going to determine the height of the basket, sort of the actual inside of the basket. And then create 7 of those sort of looped up and down petals. It's just like making a big flower. So you can use any mandrel to make any size petal. I'm using this particular wooden mandrel, but really it's up to you. You have to decide on the scale. So you just go backwards and forwards. It's very repetitive. You make them all roughly, if you can, to the same scale. So the height of the rounded petal and the base of the petal should be on the same sort of line. So 7 of those. And you will also make a smaller frame. So you saw in the beginning, you make 1 large frame for the basket and 1 smaller frame for the base of the basket. And actually this idea came to me when I was making flowers, and I just sort of was experimenting with turning them inside out, and you'll see the inside of the flower goes on the outside on this one. You can also make tea light frames like this. You see the small one I made with the bale makers. So make 2 of those frames, turn the little first loop sideways, and then tease the tops of those looped petals out so that they form a circle. Post the projecting end through the first little circle and connect it and secure it at that point. So you just bend it around and close it shut, and there you have the whole flower frame. Do exactly the same with the smaller petal framework. Tease them around, post it through, and connect it at that point. Fold it over. I've got a little bit too much, so I'm just trimming it down. And the only reason I trim it down is if you have too much, it just gets a bit bulky. You're trying to keep the sort of any big bulky bits out. So you've got those 2 frames ready. Now get your steel block and your whammer hammer and hammer the petal frames. So just those outward, especially the loopy bits at the top, flatten and spread. So do that all the way around to both of these frames. So now I've done that, I bring them together, and I'm going to use 0.4, that's 26 gauge, thin binding wire. I'm going to cut a nice long length, a sort of an arm's length. And I'm going to bind them at the center together. So I'm using this wire to go in between each of those petals. So they're sort of back to back really. And you can see if you were making a big flower, you know, to put on a plant stick, this is exactly what you would do. This would be that smaller petal would be the inside of the flower, and then you could wire beads at the center. So for your, you know, Easter decorations, you can also make a lovely big flower plant stick. It's the same, exactly the same technique. So once you've wired those 2 frames together, twist the ends together if you've got any left over like that, and just get rid of them in the sense that you don't want spiky ends. So I'm just twisting them together. I'll cut off the very ends and then just push that twisted wire into the center of the piece to make it disappear. There we go. And if anything needs tightening or you've got some loose wires, just do that now, and then you can just gently hammer the center on your steel block to compress it all into one. So now it's nice and formed. Now go to the back of the frame, so the smaller ones, and find something that you can hold in the middle that's circular and that you can fold the smaller petals. You see how they come out? Smaller petals out around it. Just lifts them up, and it's going to create the stand of your basket or the base of your basket. Equally, you could use that if you were doing the flower, but so now it's standing up on a base. And what I also like to do is make it, instead of having the rounded ends of the petal, I mean, you could have made those square anyway with your flat noses, but I just like the look of it. I just flip the end with my flat nose pliers, flip them around so that you create little feet, so it'll stand better. It's not just sitting on the rounded portion. That gives it more stability. And now you're going to bend the inside larger petals around something that you can find that is round. I'm using a spool of wire actually, but you know, you might have a pillbox or something cylindrical basically that you can push them up and around to create the basket shape. So spend a bit of time getting that nice shape. And again, if you want to just form a little bit of a lip going outward on the top, you can use your bail makers or a pen or a pencil. Just sort of fold them over and it just gives it a nice shape. And that's the framework for the basket, is this flower shape. Now we need to sort out that center because it, you know, things will fall through and it doesn't look very nice. So I'm going to hide that center by making a flat spiral out of the 1.5mm aluminium wire, but you can, you know, use whatever you've got to hand. So create a nice tight spiral that will sit in the center of your basket. What I do with this, once I've got it the right size, I will use E6000 glue or any glue I've got to hand, but E6000 is usually the one I use, to glue it into the center. Oh, there's my cat, if you could hear the cat Leo in the distance. Yeah, so you just go around and around, creating that spiral. This will be the base. So there you go. And that's roughly about the size. I'll make it just a tiny bit bigger. Cut it off and neaten it up. You can hammer it if you want, just to make it flatter if it's lifted a bit. And that gets glued into the center bit of your basket. And now we're going to do some weaving on the petals. I'm not going to take ages on this because it is very time consuming. So do this when you've got a moment to sort of, you know, drift off with your thoughts. But I'm just going to steam through it so that you can get the idea, but please do it neater than me. So what you're doing is you've got this 0.4mm wire and you wrap it around every side of every petal and then across to the next one, and that will keep the shape of your basket. You don't have to worry about being too perfect on this, because once you've filled it with the little chocolate Easter eggs, people aren't going to be sort of looking at that part of it. But obviously maybe be a bit neater than me. So you're just going around every single side of each frame and on to the next one, bringing the wire across, and you continue weaving all the way down. And I know some of you are very neat and have a lot of precision with this, but I'm just showing you the technique very quickly and roughly so that you get the idea. You don't start right at the top because that would be, but there's so much, you know, there's so many variations on this. And if you don't want to weave it, you can still, it'll still hold a few eggs, I'm sure. So go around, and you could do this with coloured wire, in fact, and it would still look quite fun. So there I've done it very roughly, and because my wires are never that sort of tight or taut, I can go around each one of them and just put a tiny little kink or tweak into each one. And what that does, it tightens all the wires around and makes the basket much firmer. So go around each of the petals, the middle of each of the petals, and do this little twist, and you'll find it'll help. It just picks up any looseness. It also gives the weaving a more interesting shape. So there, you could spend a lot longer on that, but that's the idea. Here's one I made earlier, and you can see I did the weaving much closer, more basket-like, but obviously it did take a lot longer. So there's your basic basket frame, and that will definitely hold everything you want to hold. Now we just need to make the handle of the basket. So I've got a length of the 1.5mm aluminium. I'm going to place my round nose pliers at the center of my length, cross the wires over where they meet, and just keep twisting so that I get a twisted stem. So go all the way down. And the length of this is really dependent on how long you want to make your handle. But allow a little bit more than you need, because as you twist it becomes shorter. The length is shortened. So you can hammer this, flatten out the twist. That gives it strength, makes it stronger, and it also gives it a nice look. So now I want to shape it. So place it around something circular, that you can get that sort of shape forming for the basket handle. And we're going to have to connect it next. So just check it would fit. And then what I do is the end that I held it in my round nose pliers, I undo that bit so that I have two ends that I can connect to the side of the basket. So you just untwist a little bit of that end. So now you've got those two bits that can connect to the center of one of the petals. So use the wire to bring around and to secure it. And then afterwards you'll do that to the other side. Luckily this wire is very soft, very light, very easy to squidge and squish and flatten, so it should stay in place pretty easily because it's so soft. And because it's been twisted already here, I have to spend a bit more time because it's a little bit, needs a bit of flattening, it's a bit uneven. That little exposed end or protruding end, I'm making a tiny spiral out of it to flatten at the very top of the handle there, the base of the handle rather, because that just adds another little detail and hides any messiness on the wrap. So you can keep a little bit to do that with. So there you go, there's one side. Bring it over. Don't worry too much. If it misshapes a bit at this point, you have plenty of time to come back and reshape it at the end. So bring the handle across and do the same thing on the other side. This will be a lot easier because you've got nice straight bits to work with. So bring one of them around, wrap it round the other at the top of the petal. That should do it actually. Cut off any excess, just make sure it's nice and tight and secure. And then I'm going to make sure that's no spiky ends showing. And there's still got a little bit left. I don't want so much because I want to make one of those little spirals again to flatten down to hide my wrap. And there you have it, another little spiral. So aluminium wire comes in lots of different colours. So you can make this in any colour you want. And especially, it doesn't even have to be just for Easter. It could be, you know, as a little gift basket. So I'm just shaping that handle again, making sure it's a bit more, it's got a bit misshaped from handling it. And then I'm ready to put my Easter eggs in it. You can see how they would sit and look very decorative as a gift to a friend or put at the center of your Easter table. So have fun making your own special little Easter baskets. I hope you enjoy this project, and happy Easter to everybody out there. Thank you so much for watching and supporting my channel.